Good morning. I'm Claire Ralph, Senior Partner at Carly's.
And I'm Conor Chalmers, Senior Manager at Carly's.
Welcome to episode 3 of our podcasts. We'll be meeting with David once again. We're 20 years down the line, business is booming. And Conor and I are going to be chatting with him today about his potential exit options from the business.
So, hi David, how are things going?
Hi mate, well I am knackered to be honest with you. I'm looking to get out of this business. My old bones are suffering. I'm looking for a way out and hopefully you guys can help me with that.
Okay. Well, there's lots of options that we'll talk to you about today. If you're happy for me to do so, I'd like to bring our corporate tax manager, Mitchell Clegg, in to chat through some of the options with you.
Absolutely, I'd love to meet him.
So I'll just go and grab Mitch now. Hi Mitch. So David, this is Mitchell Clegg, our corporate tax manager, and he's going to support me this morning chatting through some of the options.
Hi David, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How you doing?
Very well, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good, so I've had a bit of a briefing from Claire and Conor. I understand you're looking at your potential exit from the business. You've been in it for 20 odd years now, and just want to have a bit of a chat about what your options are. Is that right?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Brilliant, okay.
So David, you've had a really good 20 years. You know, things have been booming, successful. We've done lots of tax planning with you over the last 20 years. And who would have known that the business would have reached the heights that it has done? What about your son? Is he not interested in taking the business reins over from you?
Or maybe. I mean, certainly something I need to discuss with him, but it's definitely an option.
Yeah, so obviously from a tax perspective, which Mitch will come in and explain to you in a minute, from a tax perspective, that's very tax efficient for you to be able to hand shares down through the family.
Yeah, so the easiest option, David, is just simply to gift the shares away to your son. We can do what's called a holdover relief claim. So that means that there's no capital gains tax for you to pay on the value that you're gifting to your son, and he can just simply receive the shares and run with it. So you can give as many as you like. Don't have to give him all of your shares right now. You could do it in different tranches if you'd like. You can do some now, and as he starts to prove himself and show that he's capable of running your business for you, you can then give more and step away over a period of time, or you could simply gift all of them right now, make one claim, and walk away with, just walk away from the business right now.
What do you say that was called? Capital gains tax?
Yeah, so David, capital gains tax is when you sell or give away an asset, and if you make a gain on that, so if it's worth more than what you bought it for at the start, the revenue will tax you on the gain that you've made in the period of ownership. If you are giving away the shares and you're deemed to be connected to the person you're giving the shares away to, the revenue will tax you as if you received the full market value for those shares. So just for an example, if we set the company up originally and you paid £1,000 for your shares and they're worth £100,000 when you give them to your son, that would be a £99,000 gain that you would be deemed to have made in the eyes of the revenue. That will then be taxed at the rates of capital gains tax, which, as we know from the budget we've just had, is now also increased up to 24% for the higher rate. So that could be quite a lot of tax due. But as I said, we can make what's called a holdover relief claim to push that gain down so that no gain is crystallised now when you're giving your shares away, and your son would inherit the shares as if he had them from when you originally bought them.
So, I mean, what if I don't want to hand the shares down to him, though? Like, well, what if he's not up to the job? What if he doesn't want it?
Okay, well, there's other options that we can go through. If you're certain that he doesn't want it and won't want that responsibility within sort of 5 years, by which time I think from what you've said to us, you will be ready to retire, then Mitch and I can talk you through the other options that you'll have.
Yeah, so David, what's the management team like in the firm at the moment? Is there a good group of managers just below you that you think could be interested in taking over in the future, or are they not quite there yet either?
Potentially. I'm not really sure. Why? How could that work?
Because we could look at something called an MBO, or a management buyout, where the management team would buy the company from you. And the way that would work is the management team would set up something called an SPV, basically a separate company, a new legal entity that they could use to buy the company from you. But to do that, they will need to raise finance to fund the purchase, unless they already have funds available, which is probably unlikely.
And just to jump in there, David, as well, I know I mentioned the capital gains tax earlier. If you were gifting your shares away to your son, it's a similar concept now. If a new SPV vehicle was to come along and buy your shares from you, so you would again crystallise a gain. You would obviously receive proceeds for it this time, so they would actually pay you for your shares, and any gain that you make will then be taxable at the rates that are due. We do know that you get what's called business asset disposal relief. So your first £1 million of gain is, in the current year anyway, at 10% of tax. That is rising over the next 2 years up to a 14% next year and 18% the year after. And that's on your first £1 million of gain. Any excess over that will be at the standard rate, which is now 24%. Unfortunately, we can't do a holdover relief claim for this, because a holdover claim is only when you're gifting the asset away, which obviously we know is now not the case. And the MBO is they're going to come in and buy your shares from you.
I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not sure that's a good option. I don't think they're going to have the funds.
Okay, one other thing we could look at if you're keen to get the management team involved is what's called growth shares. And growth shares is a completely new class of share that will be allotted to the key management team. Usually, if you were to allot shares in your company, 2 members of staff, they're caught by what's called employment-related securities, which means the value that they receive is taxed at their marginal rate. So that could be 20, 40 or 45%. So sometimes simply gifting your employees shares is quite costly for them and the business. The difference with growth shares is you complete a valuation on the company to assess where the value is the day before the allotment. So the day before they receive their shares, we value the company. And that is what's called a hurdle. So that hurdle is set at, let's say, £10 million. And the new shares come in and are only entitled to any growth from £10 million. So essentially, on day one, when the employees receive the shares, they haven't got any value with them. So they're just worth the nominal value of whatever they have to pay for the shares, of £1 a share, for example.
And that means for ERS, there is nothing to report. And also, the advantage of growth shares is that the shareholders are incentivized to really help the business grow, because they're only going to see the value of what they can generate in the business from that point onwards. If we do go down that route, we would need to think about a shareholders agreement. This is a signed agreement between the shareholders to confirm the rights and obligations of each share, and also to govern how the company is run. At the moment, you are the only shareholder, so there isn't one in place. But if more people are brought in as shareholders with you, we would definitely advise getting this sorted, and we can do this for you.
And also, it outlines what happens if someone dies. So should their shares be able to be passed down to their spouses or their children? So it offers you a layer of protection with other shareholders in your business that you haven't had for the last 20 years.
And we could also include special clauses to limit what other shareholders are able to do with their shares. For example, who they're allowed to sell their shares to. We could put a clause in there to say that if they want to sell, they first have to offer the shares to you, something called preemption rights.
We do need to be very careful with this, and I don't want to get into the detail with you now because we're just outlining what the options are for you. But there can't be a binding contract for sale of the shares, so we would need to put some extra clauses in there. But as I say, I won't go into detail about that now. A shareholders agreement is a very lengthy process, something that we've done many times, and we'd need to sit and go through that with you in a separate meeting if this were the route you would decide to go down, because there's lots of decisions you'd need to make.
So, David, there is one final option as well for the management team, which is called an EMI scheme, and that incentivises them to potentially get shares at the point at which you sell in the future. So that's something we could look at introducing as well.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're going to be up to it, to be perfectly honest. And also, it doesn't really give me an out for the business either.
Yeah, I kind of get that, David. So if you're looking for a complete exit from the business yourself, to be perfectly honest with you, it would seem the most sensible solution would be to look for a third-party buyer. So what we'd need to do is we would look at identifying potential businesses that may want to acquire your business. You're most likely to have a list of those businesses rather than us, although we could go to the market and various contacts that we have. But I think in the first case, we would suggest that you kind of go away, have a think about who might be a potential buyer in your business. And I'm sure you probably know people that you may have spoken to before that would be interested in buying your business, or certainly if they found out that you were looking to sell, they would be interested in buying the business. Okay, so what we would do in the first instance is we would write to those potential buyers confidentially, not giving any information at all about the business, just to give them outline figures in terms of value, turnover, number of staff, property, who your customers are, and just give them just a broad outline of the business. Once they'd then signed a non-disclosure agreement, which is something that we have discussed with you before, we would provide them with more information about the business. In the meantime, the best thing I could suggest that you do, David, is really look at the business and make sure that it's ready for sale if that's the route you decide to go down. Like selling a house, you make sure everything's ship shape. So you look at contracts that you've got with customers, any contracts you might have with suppliers, staff, employment contracts, make a decision on what you might want to do with the property, because obviously we put that into the pension scheme, didn't we? So we might need to think about a formal lease with the company. And all of those things we call grooming the business ready for sale. It just makes it as attractive as we could make it possibly for a potential buyer.
All right, well, I need to go away and have a think about all this. Thank you so much for your time. I will go away and have a think, and I'll be in touch soon. Cheers, guys.